Hello everyone. My name is Lucena Łękawska-Andrinopoulou, and I am senior researcher at the Institute of Communication and Computer Systems in Greece, in Athens. I'm very happy to welcome you all to the first event, which is launching a series of events dedicated to the digital product passport and tracing solutions. The event series is organized by the Division of Circular Economy and Tracing of ICCS Group from ICCS. Okay. So first, I would like to explain the drive behind the event series we are launching today. Since the beginning of last year, so almost 2 years now, ICCS has been involved in several Horizon Europe projects, of which important task is the development of digital product passport. Today, you will have the opportunity to get more acquainted with two of our projects, DigiTrace and Theros. Both are coordinated by ICCS. We are also leading the DPP development in Industrial Symbiosis to Hubs for Circularity project and in Smart Chain. And finally, Theseos, which is a huge project starting this December with 3-day kickoff conference. Theseos is coordinated by ICCS with the aim of building first circular economy hub in Greece, and DPP is naturally from central point of it. ICCS is also leading traceability component development in Reconstruct, which develops DPPs for construction sector and will be presented today by its coordinator. Since the start of our adventure with digital product passport, we have been looking into guidelines, ongoing legislation and standardization efforts, and encountering many other initiatives similar to the projects we are working on. We were trying to define aspects that are common for the solutions we are developing for different sectors and realized it would be beneficial to exchange ideas and lessons learned with other projects. We have not encountered similar clustering events focusing on DPP and traceability. Therefore, we decided to launch this event series. So what are the objectives of today's event? First of all, to get acquainted with other DPP and tracing initiatives and meet with researchers involved, to initiate exchange of ideas and cooperation, to identify common challenges and work on strategies for overcoming them, and to present novelties that the projects are working on. All those objectives should help us to achieve the overarching aim to initiate work towards a common approach for DPP, rather than sector or project specific. I hope that today's event is just the beginning of the discussion. We already started planning the second digital product passport event in 1 year from now with physical presence, so please stay tuned. And I would like to use this opportunity to share with you two announcements relevant to the DPPs. Firstly, I would like to inform you about monthly status meetings, which ICCS is organizing together with SIRPAS2. The purpose of these meetings is to create a community of EU-funded projects related to DPP, to break the silos and continue the discussion we are initiating today towards a common approach. These monthly meetings will help us avoid duplication of work and build on each other's success stories, as well as to build strategies to address common challenges we are all encountering on an everyday basis when working with DPPs. The meetings will concern only the EU-funded projects. We will invite one representative per project who will present one slide update related to DPP and tracing. And the first meeting will take place on 29th of November at 1 o'clock Central European Time. And those meetings will recur every last Friday of the month. So for those of you who are interested, please send an email to me and SIRPAS2 coordinator, Caroline Bernier. The second announcement concerns a session that ICCS will be chairing during the LCM 2025 conference taking place from 9 to 12 of September in Palermo, in Sicily. The abstract submission is now open, and you're all very welcome to submit work that could be presented under the session topic Digital Product Passport and Traceability, Empowering Local Stakeholders and Consumers with Information Towards More Sustainable Choices. Just please keep in mind that you need to log in into the system to find the session, and because there are many sessions there, our is located under the topic LCM for decision making. Now let's get back to our today's event. So today's event consists of 2 sessions. The first session will focus on European Commission insights and ongoing standardization work, as well as experiences from battery sector. Session 2 is where 7 projects will present their DPP or tracing solution for selected sectors or products. And we will start with Dig and Trace, to which we will dedicate a little bit more time, as it is our featured project this year. This presentation will be followed by talks about Reconstruct, developing DPP for construction materials, Mebel Pass, focusing on furniture sector, Muddy Trace and traceability for critical raw materials, and Pluto with 3 different supply chains. 2 projects focusing on food sector will close the session, that is Theros and DPP for food. And last but not least, in this session, we have also the coordinator of SIRPAS 2, who will focus on challenges relevant to cross-sectoral development of DPPs, rather than focusing on one specific sector or product. Also, please share your questions in the chat, and we will try to address them if there's time, although the time is very limited, unfortunately. And that is all from my side. I would like now to give the floor to our first speaker, Franziska Seibold. Franziska is Policy Officer at DG Grow and will give a speech entitled Towards Sustainable Products, DPP State of Play. So I will now stop sharing.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Franziska.
My screen, hello. So I hope it all works from the technical side. If you have any problems, please just speak up or raise your hand if you have issues with the technical, because I'm sharing the slide and I'm speaking, so I hope it works.
We can see your screen, I confirm.
Can you see it? Yes.
Yeah.
Very good, great. Yeah, so as already said, my name is Franziska Seibold. I work as a policy officer at the European Commission in the Directorate for Internal Market, Industry, Entrepreneurship and SMEs, or so-called DG Grow. And my team has been actually charged with the general setup of the Digital Product Passport, the so-called DPP system. And before focusing on the DPP, I would like to briefly provide you an overview on the underlying legislation. So our legal basis is actually the Eco-Design for Sustainable Products Regulation, or in short, the Eco-Design Regulation, which got enforced since 18 July 2024. And the ESPR aims to significantly improve the circularity, energy performance, and other environmental sustainability aspects of products placed on the EU market. There is a switch from the linear to a more circular economy intended with this regulation. And the ESPR has a very broad scope. It applies to almost all product categories except for food and feed. And to achieve its goal, the ESPR mainly focuses on more and more reliable product information as regards sustainability and eco-design aspects, such as, for example, the CO2 footprint, the recycled content in a product, and so on. And this is where the DPP comes into play, which is a central part of this legislation. So when we look in more detail, the Digital Product Passport will be the digital identity card for the products or components and materials. It will store the information on the product, and it is the most direct way of accessing this information in a DPP will be a unique product identifier, which will be embedded in a data carrier on the product. So as I showed on this picture in the front, the idea is that, for example, a customer can go to a shop and just holds the phone to a product and can see the information of that product. Main aspects also in the ESPR of the DPP, it is very important that the DPP will be user-friendly, so the access should be free and should be easy. The data should be accurate, complete, and up-to-date. The DPP should also allow for differentiated access, so it should be possible to differentiate between different stakeholders. For example, a consumer, a recycler, or an authority should have different types of information available. And it is also interesting to observe that any kind of information could be stored in the DPP, not only the obligatory data that is foreseen by the legislation, but also any further information. So, for example, classes of performance in sustainability or sizes of clothing. So it would be for the product-specific legislation then to determine the content of this DPP. And yeah, it's also important that the DPP should be available for the lifetime of the product, and that will be again determined by the sector-specific legislation for each product group, because the lifetimes are very different. And yeah, regarding the looking forward, I mean, the first group, which will be for which the DPP becomes mandatory in February 2027, will be certain types of big batteries. And then the DPP is gradually introduced for a wide range of other products, such as toys, construction materials, detergents, textiles, all this coming after 2027. Our work is actually organized in the Commission in 2 pillars. So as I said already, the first pillar is the implementation of this DPP system across sectors, and this is where I'm working in. So I'm working in the team in DG Grow, which is responsible for this first pillar. So we work together with many different directorates, for example, Connect, Environment, Digic, and we also are responsible for working on the standardization and the secondary legislation, but just the one which is relevant for setting up the system as such. And I will tell you a bit more about this DPP system on how we see it in a bit. And then there's a second pillar. So my colleagues, which are working here in different sectors of the economy, for example, on textiles, on detergent, on toys, they are working on the sector-specific rules that will bring these product categories on board with the DPP. And it will be those sector-specific rules that determine then which eco-design requirements and other information needs to be made available in the DPP for each sector. So it will be sector-specific. Yeah, so I said I will talk a bit more about the DPP architecture on how we are seeing it in the moment. So the idea is, as foreseen also in the eco-design regulation, that you have this DPP registry in which the DPP should be registered. So this registry should be operated by the Commission, and there has to be at least the product operator and facility identifiers, and also potentially some limited metadata will be stored in that registry. Then the data of the DPP as such should be actually stored in a decentralized manner. So we have here 2 different places where this could be the case. So on the one hand, with the economic operators themselves, or also with DPP service providers. And the third component of the system is this web portal here, which you can see here in the middle, over which the information can be obtained. Also, this web portal should be, as foreseen in the regulation, established by the Commission. So here you see also a bit the different user journeys. So if you look, for example, at the responsible company, they will register their product with the DPP registry. The consumer can then search information about this DPP over the web portal and use it also to compare with other products. Since this event here is on traceability, the DPP will enhance traceability throughout the product's life cycle by the usage of these unique identifiers. So the eco-design regulation foresees that the DPP should be linked to a unique product identifier, but also to a facility identifier and to an operator identifier. This will then allow also the actors and manufacturing facilities related to that product to be traced. It will also facilitate this tracing, the traceability will also facilitate the task of the market surveillance authorities of tracing economic operators that placed products on the market or that placed non-compliant products on the market. When looking a bit at the timing, yeah, so the timeline is very tight. As you can see, the timing is very challenging. So we are counting backwards from February 2027 when the DPP becomes mandatory for batteries. And the first step is actually that we asked Sensenelec to develop open and interoperable standards for different general aspects of the system, in particular the identifiers and the data carriers. And I see that Thomas Röding will tell you probably much more details on this in the next presentation. So I will just give you here 2 points on this. So it's very important for us, the work of Sensenelec. We are in very close collaboration with them. It will be so-called harmonized standards. So the standards that will be developed will carry a presumption of conformity when companies work with them. And the recommendations of Sensenelec will also be used by us for the secondary legislation that we as Commission will adopt on the DPP system. So we are very closely following the process and in regular contact with the whole team working in that working group. At the same time, we are also developing in the moment several pieces of secondary legislation on the system. And we aim at finalizing the first one of them, the Delegated Act setting out the requirements for DPP service providers by mid-2026. And the objective for the remaining acts, as you can see here, is end of 2026. Yeah, and then we have the setup of the digital system as such. So we are working also here very closely with DG Digit on this. And we start with the central registry, which will be in place mid-2026 to be also prepared for the batteries coming in the market, and then also the web portal. Now maybe just quickly to give you an outlook, what we see in the DPP. So looking a bit in the crystal ball, what is the potential of the DPP beyond providing eco-design information to consumers? So I will start in the middle of the slide with the current and potential links of the DPP. So it is already foreseen in the legislation that the DPP will be connected to the Certex customs system. And this will provide that importers will indicate the registration codes for the DPPs of their products in the customs declarations. And these identifiers will then be automatically compared with the DPP register by the customs authorities. Then the product can be imported. So if authorities want more information, they can actually also request the DPP data themselves. But we also see a great potential in the DPP to work like a container and to build bridges for other systems later on. For example, the ICCS system, the Information and Communication System for Market Surveillance. This is actually our first example for a potential future link. It's not yet provided in the eco-design regulation, but it could be a next step. So because the data contained in the DPPs, together with the standards established for this data, could improve and rationalize the data collection under this ICCS. And it would be for sure very helpful if by then the DPPs would not only include eco-design data, but other compliance requirements. And as already envisaged, for example, in the Commission's proposal on toy safety that you can see here on the left. When I move then also to the right here on this slide to the data reuse, so the idea is clearly from us to reduce burden on economic operators to facilitate the work of administration and not to create more barriers and reporting obligations. So the long-term plan is that the data reported under the DPP could be, for example, reused to report under other reporting obligations. We are, for example, talking to our colleagues which are working with corporate sustainability reporting and also other reporting measures by the Commission. And the Commission is also currently revising the so-called new legal framework, and this could be also taken as an opportunity for the DPP to become the central source of information beyond the eco-design regulation. So including, for example, product requirements, certificates of conformity, certificates of performance. That could be all introduced in the DPP in different pages. And in the long run, one could also think about the companies being able to reuse the data reported under the DPP in the context of other reporting obligations, so CSRD, as I already said, or others. And it depends how product-related these reporting obligations are. The reports could then be generated largely automatically. Yeah, so this is a bit the idea, what we are doing in the moment at the Commission, what we are thinking and where we are headed. So if you have any thoughts, please contact us over our functional mailbox. As also here indicated on the slide, we are very happy about written submissions. It's not so easy for us to meet individual players because it's very difficult. We are a very small team and we need to save our resources, but we try to be as accessible as possible and we are happy to hear from you. So thank you.
Thank you, Franziska. I think we have a little bit of time. There were some questions in the audience, which I can see some speakers are actually answering, but there was a question, who is the owner of the DPP registry?
So the idea is that the Commission will set up the DPP registry. Yes, this is foreseen in the legislation.
And whether it is a central or decentral registry, there was also this question.
Yeah, so the registry will be central, but the data of the DPP, so the content of the DPP will be stored decentralized with economic operators outside or with service providers.
Yeah, okay, I think.
Yeah, I see also another one. How do you identify who can have access to what type of information? Yeah, this will still be also a technical point, but the idea is to have this differentiated access. So, for example, a consumer will have an overview of the passport, which is generally accessible. But then, for example, a repairer, which is qualified, will have maybe more data available because he looks for a specific content of a product or a recycler, and he will be qualified in a way that he has a better access to the data that he's looking for. And the same is also for authorities that are looking into specific areas. Yeah.
I see. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Franziska. I think we should now proceed with the next speaker.
Welcome.
Thomas, I think I have seen you. Thomas L. Redding, who is a co-chair of CELEX JTC 24 Digital Product Passport System and Framework. And he will talk about current status of the DPP standardization work. So please, Thomas, you can share your screen now.
Good morning. Thank you. I would see if everything works. Just let me know, do you see my screen?
Yes.
First of all, good morning to everyone, and thank you very much for having me here. And I'm on the wrong slide. I should probably start on this one. So thank you, Franziska, for mentioning our good working together. I can only repeat the same thing. It's great to have a regular exchange and to have such a good cooperation on making all these things happen. And I'm happy to take you for the next 10 to 15 minutes through the standardization proceeding. And let me start with maybe some things that might double what you have heard already, but I think it might nevertheless help to get a good overview. There are multiple regulations out currently, somehow referring to battery passports, digital product passports, circularity vehicle passports under discussion. That is sometimes maybe a little bit confusing for those who are not already like in the middle of the details of digital product passports. So as a frame, it's good to understand that there are some of these activities close to each other. There is the construction product regulation just recently being updated. So it will maybe take a little bit, but as Franziska already mentioned, it seems to be on the horizon. There's a good chance of having those activities synchronized. The JTC 24 as a joint technical committee today is appointed to work on all questions regarding the mandate that comes out of the Eco-Design for Sustainable Product regulation with an initial focus on the battery regulation. And as already mentioned, just for those who are maybe not that familiar with daily standardization work, other than just standards, this committee is tasked to create harmonized standards, and they have to meet quality requirements good enough to be referenced and listed in the official journal of the European Union so that they are good enough to demonstrate conformity to those regulations. A little bit about the background, although the numbers are changing. So the objective for the JTC24 is targeted on framework and system for digital product passports. Some call it like the horizontal structure of digital product passports, sector agnostic for all different sectors. And it's actually driven by the standardization request. And currently, honestly speaking, the 140 experts looking at all the member states that are contributing with their experts is probably already exceeding 300 people. So it's a large group of experts who are contributing with all their skills and knowledge to have these standards developed. We have now, at this moment, more than 30 liaisons from different other organizations and associations who are related to digital product passports, so that there's a strong emphasis on trying to fulfill both, let's say, both major tasks of being compatible to lots of things that are already in the market and nevertheless being future fit for developments that will come up in the near future. This standardization request, as formulated by the European Commission and then accepted by San Selenek, covers 8 different modules. And so I saw already a couple of questions in the chats, just to give you one of those ideas, the access right management and understanding who is actually responsible to publish a passport, or who's responsible for and making sure that some information is confidential. Some of these, let's say, infrastructure questions are subject of these modules, and so part of the ongoing standardization process. We have a meta structure based on an ISO standard that gives a bit of an idea how, for instance, the modules looking at the let's say, role model of a battery passport are connected to the different requirements that are needed to fulfill all the things that digital product passports are supposed to be providing in the future. And as Franziska already mentioned, some of the responsibilities and some of the components will be under the responsibility of the European Commission itself, and so therefore be provided and operated by them, where others are subject to our standardization tasks to come up with appropriate interface definitions and standard definitions for all these different modules. I'm happy to repeat one thing that is, I think, very important to understand, since often I see a lot of questions coming up. Who is supposed to define by when, what detail on which sector? The DPP data is strictly to be separated in thinking from the DPP system. The concept behind these differentiation points is regardless what kind of product and what granularity of passport is actually relevant, the fundamental structures, interfaces, protocols, security mechanisms, etc., shall be universal for all different kinds of products. Where the DPP data means to specify what exactly is to be content of a battery passport versus a textile passport, and even that one might be differentiated. If it's an industrial textile, it's probably way different than we talk about a shoe or a piece of fashion garment. So the JTC24 as of today does not handle any questions for the exact data specification. It's much more focused on providing all the generic foundation that's required to be able to specify the requirements on DPP data, and all the other aspects, as you see on the slide, regarding trust and security, APIs, data exchange, storage, data carriers, and unique identifiers, and the other 8, the total of the 8 modules as you have seen. this distinguishment, I think, is really important to understand. The groundwork is done now in the JTC 24 to provide a framework and a system for all different sectors. And then there are processes established or in the process of being established. I would say the key point there is the so-called eco-design forum, where there is a process set up how to have different mandates for standardization for different data requirements regarding different sectors, but not as a scope of JTC 24. What is the scope is, and that's one other thing which I think is helping to clarify a bit, is the scope of what part do we look at? And we look we're not looking at the upstream data collection and sustainability questions regarding detailed traceability. It is not part of the scope of the JTC to think about methods or standards, how to collect such information. It's much more how to actually register a passport, publish a passport, find ways to explain and define what data is covered by which confidentiality level, how to make sure that we can identify relevant parties reliably, and like all these, let's say, generic questions regarding the passports are in the focus of the JTC, but not things that happen actually more before a product is actually put onto the market. It's a little like the similar view, just visually differently presented. What is the view on the core system and the different important components, including those that are, for instance, relevant for economic operators and or their service providers. And I think which is something helpful is to ask the question, for who is actually the work of the JTC 24 relevant and interesting? And as you can picture, this is quite a long list. And I think there is clearly coming up a huge demand on the question for service providers. What do they need to know? How do they handle to be compliant with the certification process? But this will still take some time, as Franziska mentioned, probably the next roughly 18 months before there is a clear definition on certification details. But nevertheless, everything that's happening now probably helps all of these different stakeholders to ramp up being prepared on the upcoming developments. One, and I think the most important major goal is to understand that the JTC 24 has a strong emphasis to make sure that there is a real interoperability and a true coexistence of standards and technologies to ensure that everything that is standardized is technology independent, it is vendor independent, and by being both has a solid foundation to be a future fit solution over the next years. There are preliminary studies out in different sectors about the development path of the data requirements for instance, fashion products. And let's say, in my humble opinion, I would believe we might expect that the standards must be good enough for a development that is going from iteration to iteration. So it might even be that data requirements are changing over time, the technologies are changing over time, and the main goal is to provide standards that are good enough to live along these changes and provide a solid foundation for the future standards, for the future technologies that are to be used as well as today. Looking behind the curtain, to say in these words, we have 4 different working groups. 3 of them, let's say, are operational, and that's where the majority of the 300 experts are contributing, and they are sent usually as part of their national standardization bodies into these working groups. And then there is one, that's typically saying cross-cutting issue, covering strategic advisory group that ensures that none of the let's say, pillars here miss the opportunity to exchange information that's relevant for all the working groups. And so the strategic advisory groups helps to have the big picture in mind and keeping in mind to have that as a part of communication ensured among the working groups as well as to the chairs and then in the direct exchange with the Commission on a regular basis. That's basically all I have to say in a very quick overview. I think I'm kind of like in the 15 minutes range, and I hope that helped you a bit to get an idea what we are doing there. And last but not least, because I skipped in the beginning, my name is Thomas Röding. I'm happy that I could have been here, and Thomas Knode is the chair of the JTC, and I'm happy to support him as a co-chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thomas. There is a whole discussion ongoing in the chat. There are questions being asked and they are being answered. So I am here trying to find the first one that was for you. Just give me a second, because
I didn't see any of them while I was talking. So
yeah, of course. Yeah, so we have one. I think this was to your presentation. Whether there will be opportunity to graphically personalize the DPP, or will it be standardized central database of product informations? And we already got one answer that this is not clear yet. So I'm not sure if there are some news on this.
Well, I think part of it is already somehow, let's say, indicative written in the ESPR itself. If you look at the articles covering labels, so there is a kind of a hint on probably visualization requirements regarding those labels. But let's say talking about the digital view on it, there is no specification yet out how they are supposed to be presented. But let's say, in my understanding, even given what we just said before, that there is the intention of DPPs being capable of providing data that is voluntary part of the DPP, that would somehow tell me for some parts of the visualization, there is probably a lot of freedom. And if, let's say, just from my interpretation, not legally binding, but looking at what we have seen in the eco-design before the regulation, it looks like we have a clear understanding, let's say, looking at an energy label, and what is the visualization on those parts. And taking these 2 points, we kind of get an idea between clear requirements for certain aspects as required by compliance, and probably some freedom in some other aspects for things that are not as strictly defined by compliance requirements. But this is, let's say, a guess.
Okay, yeah, we have more questions, but unfortunately we cannot spend more time on this right now, as we are 5 minutes behind the schedule and there are many speakers. So thank you very much, Thomas, for joining us.
And I'm happy, and just as a last word, if there are more questions, I'm happy, and you can probably share our contact information, or you find me on LinkedIn to help to answer questions as good as I can. So just feel free to reach out, and I'm more than happy to provide answers as good as possible.
Yeah, we will definitely try to follow up on what has come up during the event. So we might contact you if there are some questions. Thank you very much. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you.
And now we have the next speaker, Suzanne Gut-Orłowski, who is founder of For the Record, DPP Specialist Rain Alliance, and Technical Advisor Global Battery Alliance. So the topic of Suzanne's presentation is DPP Pioneers, Battery Sector. So please, Suzanne, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lucina. I have only a few minutes time to give you an overview what all these regulations mean for a specific product sector, for the battery sector, because there the work had started 4 years ago, and I want to take you through the journey that I've been through for the last 4 years in the battery sector and what had happened. And you know how digital product passports starts to come alive. I have, as I said, For the Record is a DPP consultancy agency, but we're also heavily involved in the standardization process in several working groups of the JTC 24 that was just introduced by Thomas. So in my view, there are 10 steps to introduce a DPP to a new product segment. And it starts earlier, and I'm going to through these 10 steps very quickly. And it starts much earlier than, the regular people see something about the digital product passport. First of all, it starts very early with an impact analysis of a certain product segment, often done by the European Commission by preliminary studies that are done about that product sector, to understand what circularity potential does a product have and what impacts does the product have. And this is also how they end up in the priority list of the work plan or under ESPR. So if I hear sometimes, we just want to have more transparency about the supply chain, that's not true. There's very specific things that the European Commission wants to address in the area of batteries. That is, for example, land use, for example, cobalt and lithium mining, child labor issue, disposal of material. So all these issues that come with the product segment are looked at in those studies. And then mitigation strategies and mitigation plans are actually being developed. How those difficult issues can be addressed. Generally, in the area of batteries, of course, reducing new materials, or reducing the raw material mining as such, because that already comes with a lot of impact. Incentivize other alternative chemistry, do mine site certification, make sure the mines work after certain standards, and of course enable and incentivize our strategies. So reuse, repair, repurpose, recycle. Those are kind of the mitigation plans. And based on those mitigation plans, then there is this regulation phase where the battery regulation came out. And other delegated acts are now in preparation for other product segments such as washing machines, but first of all steel and textiles. In that phase, the regulation kind of receives its text and content to describe those mitigation strategies and the information that is needed in the digital product passport. So here, basically, the data is being defined, the data assurance is defined, and that's, of course, also specific for a certain industry. They wouldn't say what standards to use, but for example, as I presented here, there are the IRMA standard, which says something about your mining site, if it works after certain standards, or the Towards Sustainable Mining standards in Canada, and in Germany, we have the SARA standard from TÜV, and many other standards around. So this is something that is indirectly then requested in the delegated acts, and of course many other things that then need to be received from the supply chain somehow. So then in the next step, you would analyze your value chain. Where is my material coming from? Who are the suppliers in the supply chain? What needs to be standardized? Which of those which of these supply chain actors have impacts? How would they need to be, certified or audited? Where do I get the data from to actually produce my digital product passport? So that's kind of the next phase where you analyze your value chain and identify all the actors in there and what you need from them to issue the digital product passport. Then there is another source of information for your digital product passport. So for batteries, there was already something like the EMDS, which is, a central product database for supply chain data for batteries. Then maybe it's your own ERP systems. Then there is something called GABI, where you get some information about the carbon footprint or the life cycle assessment of your parts. Then there's track and trace vendors that basically make a business out of knowing your supply chain, auditing companies along your supply chain. And of course, there's also the Big Four, creating certificates about the compliance of standards of your supply chain. So you have to find out where you get the data from actually to fill the digital product passport. Also, then you look at, what are already the existing IT standards that are available today to exchange data between actors in the supply chain. What are existing vocabularies that we can use, or where can we use parts of it, such as the safety data sheet for chemicals? Is that something that can feed into the digital product passport for batteries? Can we reuse something there? And how do I exchange data between the companies? So that was kind of the status quo, but it was clear that was not enough, and that more information, more standards needed to be developed. Then what's very important is to understand the business needs of your supply chain, because there's a lot of business confidentiality, for example, needed or requested by the economic operators. For example, battery or cell manufacturers do not want to reveal their supply chain. To car manufacturers do not want to reveal, their mine sites and so forth. So and this is hindering the entire process of actually bringing the data together. But it also needs to be respected, because transparency of a supply chain, or a very good supply chain, often is the recipe for a very successful product. And there we have to kind of even out the needs that we have to gain more transparency, and also to keep companies in business. So at least in the battery industry, that's also a topic that has to be evened out. And there's, of course, different solutions to that. You can do technical solutions by access control measures to only reveal information that you want, the end customer or supply chain actors to see, but it's not really trusted by a lot of people because it's not known yet, such as zero knowledge proofs or the like. So what currently is working in the battery industry, that there are trusted third parties that are contracted by cell manufacturers, battery manufacturers, to actually find out information about the supply chain, but do not reveal that information to everyone. So it's basically trusted third parties that mitigate that issue and keep business confidentiality. What you then have to do is to see, okay, what's the current ecosystem? Where, how many companies or organizations are existing? Who can standardize the things that we need, the vocabularies? Where can the industry discuss, joint ways of how to implement that? And very often that's not enough either. So there's a lot of forming of new alliances in the and projects in the battery industry. We have research projects such as the Battery Pass. We have industry alliances being built during that process. The Global Battery Alliance was probably there first, but it has the intent to make batteries more sustainable. Then the research project Catena X was there to, to establish data exchange along the supply chain and looked at digital product passports. Then we have Surpass, of course. We have the United Nations Transparency Protocol that's coming up for the international supply chain and verifiable data from there. We have the Eco Design Forum, which is coming up, it's just being built, and other initiatives that have newly been built because there is the need to come together as an industry and standardize things, be it the vocabulary, be it technology, be it governance, be it audit standards and so forth. There's a lot of work that's being done to establish the entire ecosystem actually to fill the digital product passport for batteries. And here's just where these different initiatives are located. There is the UNTP protocol, which looks at the supply chain and the secure exchange of data in the supply chain. Then here we have the Sensenelec work for the digital product passport itself and downstream that's currently standardizing. Battery Pass has been supporting that work. Gaia-X is, the foundation for verifiable data exchange. Catena-X here along the supply chain. Global Battery Alliance also looks at the supply chain and its due diligence and so forth. So this is where these activities are located. You have to involve a lot of different stakeholder groups, the governance stakeholders, economic stakeholders, societal stakeholders, solution providers, of course, the manufacturers themselves, the use and maintenance stakeholders, and of course, recycling stakeholders. So all of those, actually, you have to bring together to build a meaningful digital product passport. And then you go into technical standardization. You saw everything about JTC 24. There has been some work before that, a landscaping of standards. Then, there is standardization around the product environmental footprint going on, and it's being further developed. There's ISO standards currently being developed for the battery vocabulary, but I think I have another slide on this one, which is here. So out of the battery pass project, there came the data attributes long list, and I think now we are already at version 2 or 3, which includes all the attributes that need to be in a digital product passport. And here they really made a huge effort to bring the entire industry together to align the attributes with the Global Battery Alliance, with the Catena-X project, the Battery Pass Consortium, of course, public consultation, experts, to bring together, a largely aligned set of attributes that are needed to comply to the battery regulation and to have everything in the battery passport that is required by the regulation. The Global Battery Alliance has issued a lot of rule books looking at biodiversity, indigenous rights, greenhouse gas, circular design, forced labor, and human rights, so that you have an idea of what the ESG performance actually means for batteries and how you evaluate those. Yeah, and they did these rule books only for the battery industry. So something similar might have to be developed for other product categories. And they also have issued a track and trace guidelines, how to actually add up the carbon footprint along the battery supply chain. How do you add them up? How do you indicate secondary data and primary data? This all somehow needs to be written down and being aligned on. And last but not least, the main challenges that I saw in the battery industry was, first of all, the supply chain is unknown. Battery producers or car manufacturers did not know their battery supply chain. So that's already a big step that you have to look into, or have someone, contract someone to look into that and provide that data to you. Then certain digital product passport data is simply not available. You would have to start, I don't know, your SAP project to get the data from your systems. But sometimes that's not enough. For example, the CO2 footprint of a product is not known to many people. So you have to start calculating that and have it audited, and certified. Standards are not available. For example, we're building them now in JTC 24 for the system. The battery pass is building the standards for the battery passport vocabulary. So there's some work to do. Industry consortia are not available where you can go to and discuss all of these things, bring in your interests, and make sure your business is not affected too much or by accepting too many changes. Then also we have a big challenge that people think the digital product passport will be too expensive, but that's all an issue of how do you implement and standardize it. So if you implement it on or standardize it on open standards and support open source solutions, then it doesn't have to be expensive. But the idea of many people is this is going to be very expensive. But that's not necessarily the case. Business confidentiality is a big issue in the supply chain. So there, start early to find ways how to mitigate that, to get the data you need for the regulation, and to still protect your business. And the last thing is sometimes there are too many competing standards being started by too many different initiatives, which then have to align again. So I hope for the next battery passports this will be avoided. I see it currently in the area of carbon footprint calculation. There's one calculation coming from PACT, one from the Global Battery Alliance, one from the European Commission themselves. So, how do we align on all that, and where do we do that, in which forums, and in which discussions? So that's it, I guess, from me, my experience from implementing the battery passport so far. Get in touch also by LinkedIn, please, if you have more questions or want some insights. I'm looking forward to your message.
Thank you, Suzanne. It was very interesting to see the experiences from a more advanced sector. If possible, because I have seen you earlier very active in the chat, maybe if you have some time, if you could have a look and reply. Some of those are questions, some of those are comments. So I would suggest, if you have time, to have a look and reply, because we are behind the schedule, and we should proceed with session 2. But thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. This was the last talk in the first session, and now we will proceed to session 2, to the projects. We will start with our featured project, Dig and Trace, which ICCS is coordinating. Afterwards, we will have a short break. So please, Fodoropoulos, my colleague, will introduce you now to Dig and Trace. Please, Fodori, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Lucy. I'm Fodoris Theodoropoulos. I'm a technical leader of the Division of Circular Economy and Tracing of the ICCS Group. So as Lucy said, we will pretty much look into some relevant developments of Dig and Trace, and specifically try to explore the link between digital product passwords and advanced sorting techniques. So what I'll initially do is make a small introduction to the DPP and sorting, at least from the perspective of Dig and Trace, and then to try to actually look more into this link between DPP and sorting, which is pretty much an activity of the upcycling business, through a set of questions and answered, based on actually some demonstrated use cases that we have thought of, designed and developed within Dig and Trace project. So we will pretty much focus on the wood by product sorting, let's say, case, but many things that we will discuss and we will see here could be transferred to other domains. So hopefully after this presentation, you can have like relevant ideas popping up. So that will be great if that happens. Actually, regarding the DPP and the actual dynamic DPP is something that pretty much goes a bit leverages on the DPP. So on everything that has to do with information that is available with respect to product info, circularity, sustainability, traceability, and of course other data that applies to products, but which has, let's say, a more dynamic nature time-wise, and which could be interesting for both end users, but also intermediate actors and systems of the supply chain. So there's also this scope. And when talking about, of course, human users of DPP, obviously they could be interested because they can be benefited by looking product info and acting accordingly, according to their, role, if they're simple users or certification bodies or whatever. And of course, they can trust the product they are about to consumer, looking into the consumer perspective. And of course, this notion of trust is important for producers also, which create this trust between the product through the additional verified information with DPP, and also gives them potentially, this could be a technical issue also, to collect data regarding post-production life, which could be also an interesting case. On the perspective, let's say, of mostly the industrial system and supply chain actors, it gives an opportunity to reinforce current internal practices by processing DPP data. It also gives the opportunity to reinforce current processes with business partners, with B2B communication collaborations through DPP data sharing. And of course, it enhances sustainability, circularity, legal conformance, and of course, strategy beyond typical legislative regulations. All these actors come from the manufacturing industry, consumer, food and beverage, automotive, construction, pharmaceuticals, healthcare, and of course upcycling. So within Dig & Trace, we pretty much focus on mostly the manufacturing, industrial product industry, and the upcycling notion of it. So we see DPP design development from this perspective, and the applications that we have thought and we have started to demonstrate have to do with both human end users and also industrial processes that have to do with upcycling and specifically the sorting. So in what remains, we will try to pretty much elaborate more on this. Basically on how can a DPP be created within such a process, and also how can it be used in the sorting process. So when we think of sorting, the most, let's say, simple case that we have a sorter belt and some robotics that have the ability to sort, let's say, products, in our case, wood byproducts, according to their properties. So within Dig & Trace, we have, among other use cases, we have zoomed a lot into the wood, the value chain. So we have actually the sorting process, a wood chemical industry, and let's say a furniture industry. And we have pretty much seen the interaction internally within the sorting industry and externally with the other business, let's say, actors, but also have expanded a bit also to what the interest could be for other business actors also. So in terms of the DPP, in our case, DPP apply to, let's say, wooden chairs, tables, but also especially wood byproducts, such as pieces of wood used to manufacture the aforementioned goods. And obviously, DPPs could be created at the production stage ideally. But for the case of byproducts, and specifically in our case for wood byproducts, this is something that could also happen in the sorting phase in the cases of not having already created DPP, because at that stage, and specifically at the output of a sorting stage, we really know exactly the classification properties of such products, and we can actually digitize them, right? So this gives an extra potential due to the sorting industry to creating DPPs. And in the Dig & Trace case, what we have experimented a bit is with this creation based on ultra high frequency RFID. So the concept here is that actually you have UHF RFID tags which are placed on wood byproducts, and then what can happen is that pieces of wood which have been classified and put into, let's say, a sorted bin can pass from RFID antenna, and since we know exactly the properties of such a specific, let's say, bin, we could actually initialize all the DPP content practically with these types of woods. Also, the sum of the wood byproduct, which is the bin, can also be considered, let's say, a product and which has a DPP on itself, actually also. So now there's the next question of, okay, since we have DPP products, how can we use them? So one concept idea that we have seen also in DigiTrace is the ability to actually use DPP the data from augmented reality enabled sorting assistant. So this is actually a headset that is that humans wear on their heads, and they can actually scan, let's say, DPP enabled QR codes, for example, of the wood byproducts at the bin level, and then what they could see is actually the status, what kind of wood is there, and if, for example, this bin is full or not, and actually update the DPP and said, for example, that it's that a bin is ready for dispatch to the actual destination. Another concept idea, for example, could be actually more focused on supply chain optimization. So, for example, again, within the sorting infrastructure, we could imagine that a human operator scans the QR code of the DPP, and that let's say gets information about the next hop of this bin. Meaning maybe, let's say, the wood industry, which uses these byproducts to actually produce wood, which will be reused for furniture construction, for example. So this is just another example within the same, let's say, business setup. Of course, on the traceability level, another possibility could be to, for example, now moving towards the chemical wood byproduct industry level, to actually scan with RFID technology, for example, bins coming in order to update the system with the actual reception, so that the remaining processes could be ignited. And again, at that level, we can imagine all sorts of AR scanning of these bins in order to get recommendations regarding the next action of, for example, in the case of wood byproducts, of manufacturing plywood or particle boards at this stage. Of course, now, since we have imagined, and what we actually saw the demos is that we actually created DPPs at the wood byproduct level, obviously such items can start coming into the sorting facilities. I mean, products with DPPs, right? So obviously, one uses to actually use the type of wood byproducts which is encoded within the DPP, for example, by scanning the RFID readers, the RFID tags from readers which are installed in front of the sorting facilities, retrieving the type, and also localization information, because that's also a possibility to some extent through RFID readers, in order to provide this information to the actual sorting systems, and thus be able to sort according to the type of wood. So this increases the use for potential of increases the potential of reuse, and it's also that something that boosts circularity and sustainability value within the chain. Now, in terms of the overall technology stack that has been used to demonstrate these cases within DigiTrace, we had obviously UHF RFID readers, tags, tag printers, the augmented reality displays. In terms of software, we have pretty much created the DPP blockchain ecosystem using a private blockchain, which is Hyperledger Fabric, just for the purposes of the demonstration, and pretty much in order to also look into some other things such as authentication, authorization, because that's again an important topic, and Obviously, we need good, let's say, data governance in order to balance between transparency and between, let's say, privacy, which is also very essential. And of course, also we had more sensor integration software to pretty much wrap it up. So what we saw through through DigiTrace up to this point, the project has not ended yet, so we have some future step also, is that obviously DPP could serve as a horizontal plane for multi-contact applications targeting both the humans and machines. DPP data interoperability is a key for widespread adoption. DPPs are opportunity for interoperable data potentially. Sorting processes are central to DPPs, since sorting can use DPPs in order to, use, for example, product types and do the sorting, but also DPPs can use sorting, since it's a nice place to initialize DPPs, potentially for products that don't already have one. Also, DPP indicator specification regarding product information, circularity, sustainability, traceability is very important, and it would be nice if it could be well defined and ubiquitous to boost the relevant sectors. And obviously, standardization is really a central part for all this discussion. What we have considered here is applications that reuse the same data across, business levels. So obviously, standardization interoperability is very important for that. So I will end now with some future steps. And what we have is, what we will also see digitize the concept design, development, validation for other business domains, and the expansion of DPP indicators, and also input and participation into relevant standardization activities. So that's all from my side. Hopefully I was okay with the time, and thank you very much for the opportunity to make this presentation on behalf of DigiTrace and the circularity and traceability team of iSense.
Thank you, Fodori. There's one question. I'm not sure if we have data available on this about economical viability of sorting the wood. I don't know if we, maybe if we would look more into it, probably we have some relevant tasks in DigiTrace.
Yes, we have some relevant tasks, and of course, this is one specific case where we had the opportunity to, go more into the development, the software development, see technical issues, which can be also transferred to other domains. But anyways, it was a way to start looking into, ideas of using and reusing the DPP for not strictly DPP purposes, let's say.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. So I think we deserve now a short break. I suggest to meet in 10 minutes at 12:30, and we will start with SIRPAS 2 just after the break. So see you in a while. Caroline Bernier is coordinator of SIRPAS 2. And the topic of her presentation is cross-sectoral DPPs for compliance and beyond compliance. So please, Caroline, the floor is yours now.
Hi. Okay, thanks, Lucy. Thanks for the invitation. So just very briefly, just to remind everyone what is SIRPAS 1 and SIRPAS 2. So both are funded by the European Commission's Digital Europe program. SIRPAS 1 was a coordination and support action, whereas SIRPAS 2 is an innovation deployment action. Both were very large consortia, so 31 partners for SIRPAS 1 and 50 partners for SIRPAS 2. So the objective of SIRPAS 1 was to build consensus on a standards-based DPP system, and we published a proposal for the DPP system stack, the protocol stack, in March 2024. And I'll go over some of the aspects of this proposal in this presentation. Whereas the objectives of SURPASS 2 is to deploy at-scale DPPs in 4 target value chains and demonstrate data-enabled B2B activities that promote circularity. So just to give you an idea of the size of the consortium, so 50 partners, but this does not include the pilot ecosystem partners that will actually execute the pilots, which are on the order of 100. We have a very large community of experts and community of practice group that support us in our work. So this is more than 600 organizations. And then we have our stakeholder community mailing list and all that, several thousands of organizations. So just to go over our objectives again. So we have 13 pilot ecosystems, briefly described later. And really the focus is to demonstrate the use of DPPs in B2B context. So less focus on the consumer here, but more focus on what's going on downstream from the creation of the DPP. Because DG Connect wishes to prove that that the DPP can promote circularity and is mostly interested in activities for companies. Another very important of our work aspect of our work is that we support the ongoing Sensenelec standardization work in JTC 24. We have an additional objective of demonstrating cross-pilot and cross-sectoral interoperability of what we develop. So it's relatively easy to create a pilot for a DPP, but it's more difficult to demonstrate that the different pilots that you create are indeed interoperable. So this is one of our objectives. We want to provide support to SMEs in their uptake, so deploy open source code and tutorials and training materials, etc. And we want to support the deployment of a diverse and vibrant DPP as a service solution provider community. So this is why we created the community of practice group, which currently has more than 100 DPP solution providers involved. And of course, we want to support the deployment and adoption of DPPs by other sectors. So briefly, our current synergies with JTC24 are the following. So we have applied to have an official liaison role to JTC24. This is ongoing. So we are funded by DG Connect through the Digital Europe programs, as I stated. And so their main objective in funding us is to provide quantitative proof of the value creation of the DPP in B2B circular use cases. And these are economic proofs and environmental proofs. And DG Connect also expects that SURPASS 2 will contribute to JTC24 with feedback gathered from real-world pilots that go beyond regulatory use cases, so that both focus on regulatory aspects, but also go beyond regulations. And a final thought for this community here, we can also support all of EU-funded projects in bringing their use cases and their ideas for the technical system aspects of the DPP to JTC24. This is something that we can discuss in the future. So very briefly, what is our Lighthouse pilot for us? So it's an ecosystem of partners, most generally about a dozen partners. There's a leader and there's a number of upstream partners who create DPPs for the products and a number of downstream partners that we refer to as R partners because they are addressing one of the R's of the circular economy. And they all come with a use case that focuses on one of these circular activities. And these use cases necessarily include B2B data exchanges. So in this slide, we have briefly summarized our 13 pilots. It's too small for you to see. But I just wanted to show you that our pilots are all structured in the same way. Most of them are led by a DPP as a service solution provider. 6 of them are focusing on textile-related products, including mattresses. 5 pilots are focusing on electronic and electrical equipment. 1 is on tires, and final 1 on construction products. So there we have some nice short videos for each one of these pilots on our website, so you can look that up. So an important aspect of the DPP that was mentioned by Francesca earlier today is that the DPP is not just a regulatory tool, but it is a great opportunity. And so this is the vision that was proposed in Surpass 1 and that we continue in Surpass 2, is that the DPP is a great opportunity because it comes with a small regulatory and mandatory core, and in particular, the definition of standardized data exchange protocols, which is today a big barrier in industry. Okay, so the DPP is an opportunity to lift this barrier, and around this small mandatory regulatory core, we can build a large number of additional things, additional technologies, and I'm sure that all of the EU-funded projects that are present in this meeting today are focusing at least on one of these different topics. So, for example, linking the DPP to an industrial digital twin, or extending data models for traceability, or focusing on blockchain technologies, or etc. So that's the DPP is a nice playground for European researchers, I would say. But coming back to Surpass 2, so Surpass 2 is focusing essentially on this aspect of the thing. So data-enabled circular business models. So just this slide is one slide that summarizes the Surpass 1 proposal for the DPP system architecture. And so the first important point is that the DPP, that as we see it, is an information system. So it's not a platform. Okay. So what do I mean by information system? I mean, in the same way that the World Wide Web is an information system, that this is how we see the digital product passport. Second, in the proposal that we made, we suggest that in everything, flexibility should be maximized. And I believe that Thomas earlier made the same comment, and we're completely aligned on this vision. Flexibility, as long as interoperability is guaranteed, in all things, flexibility should be maximized. And in particular, one of the things I'm most proud of from Surpass 1 is that we were able to find consensus on a definition of identifier interoperability that is as inclusive as possible. Okay, this was not obvious and it was quite difficult, so I'm very proud of that. Third, we proposed 2 parallel architectures to get to the data. Okay, the idea is that we have a short-term architecture and a longer-term architecture that can coexist. And the idea here is that the system is going to be here for dozens and dozens of years, and so it should be able to evolve. And finally, we propose to transport the data with the accompanying semantics, so the metadata. And therefore, we propose that the DPP implement a semantic interoperability layer being built using linked data concepts. And luckily, the semantic web already comes with this very mature technology, so this is something that already exists. So this is a visualization of what I said previously. So we start from a unique product identifier that's embedded on a data carrier, and there are 2 parallel paths to get to the data, which is stored in decentralized repositories. This is where the semantic interoperability layer is implemented. Okay, I have many tutorials on what the meaning of semantic interoperability, what that actually is, how it's implemented, why we need semantic interoperability. So this is a very important topic. One of our most recent activities in Surpass 2 was to publish a new version of what we call the user stories. So the user stories are a translation of the legal requirements from the SPR into a textual representation of the different activities that stakeholders must do to interact with the DPP system. So here we're completely cross-sectoral. We're not addressing one specific sector, but these user stories are completely cross-sectoral. And the objective of making these user stories is that it helps us have a dialogue with the European Commission to make sure that we understand their intentions. And hopefully we will be able to translate these user stories into technical requirements. We have submitted our user stories to JTC 24. Hopefully this will be a useful document for them. And we will likely make several iterations of this document. We have also presented these in our monthly meetings with the European Commission's DPP team. So these user stories, they address different aspects of the DPP lifecycle, from creating the DPP to deactivating it. Just an important point of jargon. So we always refer to the RIO, so the responsible economic actor. So in our world, we talk about the RIO all the time. The RIO is the economic actor that is responsible for DPP, legally responsible for the DPP creation, and all of the implications for backups and updates, etc. And managing access control, even if this can be delegated to a DPP service provider. So just to tell you the publication history for our user stories. So the first version 2 was published in March 24. It was reviewed by the European Commission's DPP team and by our partners. And we released just 3 weeks ago version 3, and is currently under review by the European Commission's DPP team. So you can download it on our website. So in this slide, I resumed once again the proposal from SURPASS 1 for the DPP system architecture. And since this proposal it's kind of in several different documents, and all of these documents, they are 90 pages, and most people don't have time to read 90 pages documents. Well, I identified in red the places where this is actually described. And I also made some links to some YouTube videos where I describe the concepts, very important concepts about semantic interoperability. Okay, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Caroline. This was very, very nice to hear about the SURPASS 2 approach. As I said before, we are a bit behind the schedule, but there is some discussion in the chat about something specific you said, which was started by Adrian. So maybe if you could have a fast look and reply to what is being discussed on this topic, this would be helpful for some of our participants. And I think there is not really time for questions. We need to proceed with the next project. So once again, thank you very much. And we will now proceed to Reconstruct, which will be presented by Jose Lucas Macero from ITEC.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll share my screen. Okay. Hopefully you can see my screen.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you for the invite. I'm Jose Lucas, I'm the Reconstruct coordinator, and I'll briefly explain what are we doing regarding digital product passports in this project. This project is a consortium of 16 partners. We have practically all the stakeholders needed in the value chain of the product, from the manufacturer and the raw material provider to the construction company to the universities and technological enterprises that give softwares to evaluate these projects. This project itself, the main objective is not just the DPP. We are evaluating the whole value chain through the assessments of LCA, LCC, and so on, from the waste sourcing to the loop closing for the circular economy of all the products and manufacturing new innovations that we are creating during the project. Today, we are just going to focus on the digitalization aspects of the project, but I will go through some of the basic requirements that the project has that have informed or have shaped the structure of the DPP for this project itself. Basically, regarding the products, we are evaluating solutions to eliminate or at least try to reduce the amount of cement in products in the construction sector by creating geopolymers that could substitute these components. So we will have 2 demo sites, one in Brussels and one in Barcelona, that will be using those components. Some of them will be industrialized and precast components like pavements or facade structures. Some of them will be sandwich panels for slabs or different floor structures, and some of them will be in situ through concrete for in situ. All those components for ensuring the information transfer through all the other stakeholders and tasks will be through the digital product passport. So we will need to ensure that the whole that data needed for all the assessments and for all the tracing of that product is inside the digital product passport, because some of the aspects and some of the goals of the project are to create the material passport of the building at a component level, meaning that precast component, or at a building level on those 2 demo sites, and connect all of that with a digital twin that could optimize the model and create different solutions or different recommendations to adjust that model. So basically, the digital product passport needs to encapsulate all the information, if it's mandatory or not in a digital product passport, because we need to evaluate all those aspects at a building level and at a component level. So that would be what this project requires the digital product passport to do, for example. In this case, we have a structure similar to this, where all the products in the project and in the demo sites will have a digital product passport. The main goal is to ensure that new cement and those new components are designed to disassembly, designed to be adaptable, and to have the most amount of information needed for those tasks in the future, and ensure that information goes through the whole system and the different softwares in the consortium to arrive to the material passport to have all that information in the building, in the digital building logbook. In that regard, as throughout the whole workshop has been mentioned, this comes from the ESPR, but also the CPR that will be published in the coming months, that will need to go to the pour that information so we can evaluate the whole building through the levels methodology, taxonomy, EPPD, etc. So basically, for our project, for the Reconstruct project, the digital product passport is the main ingredient to evaluate the performance of the building. For that purpose, we need to create a digital product passport for the cement that will be an ingredient for the digital product passport for the pavement blocks, that will then be connected to the BIM model, to a 3-dimensional BIM model with all the information that will need to be read by all the different softwares from the different providers in the project, that will need to evaluate different aspects of that product or that building. So the amount of information that we require from the digital product passport is very vast. Some of them are not standardized yet, and we are taking into consideration different ISOs or different initiatives that are standardizing those aspects to make sure that if Symbiosis needs information for the Symbiosis potential calculations, that they receive the CER codes, for example, to evaluate which type of waste is expected from that product at the end of life. So we need to ensure basically that some of the consortium partners are the clients of the digital product passport, and that needs to be interoperable with all the different systems and the whole different softwares. In that regard, as I said previously, we are producing a new cement, a new geopolymer that will be used in both the demo cases, but manufactured by two different manufacturers. So we will have different identifiers and different production plants that will have different suppliers. And then, depending on which demo case it is, they will produce different products that will have a standardized or harmonized standards for the declaration of performance, or they may not have one, and we will have to go through EADs or different systems for making sure that we have all the aspects carried out in that regard. So basically, the contents of the digital product passport, as most of the other speakers have talked about, we have the product identifier and the operator and all the facility identifiers, but specifically for the Reconstruct project, it's very important also to have the declaration of performance, being, for example, the standard of the Smart CE that some of the countries of the EU have already standardized for that, and it's also a workshop document that was created by the Commission. And for the sustainability data, we will need the product lifecycle data through the environmental impact. In this case, in the Reconstruct project, we are using the ILCD EPD data format that it's also compatible with Smart CE because it's a very similar structure of data. And then we also need the material composition and the product circularity sheet that, for example, in the ISO's 59000 series regarding the circular economy, they are already giving some information on what those aspects could be. And we are trying to not reinvent the wheel and use standards that have been already discussed to make sure that its structure is dynamic and can be changed in the future. So all that information needs to be populated in a way that it's interoperable for all those software providers, and then carry out all those assessments that we need to do during the project. Some of the challenges regarding that in the project is basically that the construction sector is a very, I would say, non-traditional sector where in this case, for example, this is the best case scenario where the product that is manufactured by the economic operator is the same one as gets installed in the building. So we have the whole tracing of that product and those characteristics, their environmental impact. That may also happen with a multi-product that has an assembly line, like a window, for example, with their frame and the glass, and then the window itself gets installed in the building. But most of the cases in the construction sector, what happens is that the product itself is made in situ. It's a pillar made in situ with concrete, or it's a wall, and those components of the buildings have the information at a product level, but not at a component. We don't have the performance, for example, of the pillar itself in a digital product passport. So this is something that we will also be studying and carry out different studies where we will most likely use the BIM model and different iterations of the digital product passport to make sure that that information of performance gets carried out, and a software that calculates structure loading or any software like that could use that information to make sure that that everything comes from the beginning of the of the product to the building components. Hopefully I was brief, and I would look forward to any questions regarding that. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much. Sorry, because the chat is the chat is very the participants are very active, so I'm a bit losing the questions. Here is the one which I think is relevant to your talk. Is this solution economically viable for the builders and producers? So I wonder, maybe you have some relevant task within your project that deals with the economical aspect. Maybe you could a little bit perfectly comment on this.
Yeah, basically, what we are trying to do is not to give a lot of burden to the builders and the producers. Basically, the structures that we are studying and trying to carry out are pretty straightforward, and some of them are already standardized and are easy to do. But one aspect of the project is the LCC, the life cycle costing of all of that. So obviously, all those aspects will be studied and will be making sure that not only for big companies that probably this undertaking would be way easier, but also making sure that SMEs can provide this kind of information without having a lot of burden to them. Yeah.
So I think, Lucas, who has asked this question, you should be following the Reconstruct results, the webpage, and probably the relevant deliverable will be available then there in due time.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Jose. And now we will change the sector. We will go to furniture. Sarah Falahi from RISE is today with us, and she will speak about Mebel Pass. Please.
Yes, thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Let's see if I actually managed to start the presentation. Do you see the slides now?
Yes.
Yes, perfect. So happy to be here and to represent our project, Digital Product Passports, as an enabler for circular furniture flows. My name is Sarah Falahi. I'm Director of Unit Technologies for Interaction, which is part of RISE, Research Institutes of Sweden. And this project has been a collaboration between several partners on the research side, Chalmers Industry Technique and Antrop, and also together with 15 representatives from the furniture value chain in Sweden, which you see here. And it was a project that we started in November 2021 and finished it in this year during spring. And it was with the support of Sweden's Innovation Agency and region Västra Götaland here in Sweden. So the idea basically behind the project was to prepare the value chain for furniture when it comes to implementation of digital product passports and understanding what a digital product passport can provide and enable in terms of higher circularity of furniture in future value chains. When it comes to our perspective on circularity, I think this model hopefully will help understand like the different dimensions that we see with the circularity, which is something that is very similar to what you have been seeing before, different dimensions when it comes to extending the life of the products, utilization of the products, and making sure that the products that have the possibility to be shared between multiple actors, they are actually used in a system that allows and enables higher utilization, recirculation of the materials, the components, and the products themselves in new productions and in remanufacturing cycles and repurposing cycles, and also finally regeneration. Also when it comes to application of digital product passports and what that enables in circularity, we see also a lot of potential for measuring circularity, how the data that is used in digital product passport and is available in digital product passports can also be used to measure the circularity on a product level. This is basically what we focused on, or what I would like to highlight from the project today with you, that we focused on in discussion with in dialogue with the representatives from the value chain, and the possibilities that they see with circularity in their different businesses. We focused on 3 situations or scenarios, specifically in what digital passport can do for circularity. Circular design and production was one of them. Sustainable purchase decision for consumers was the other one. And extending the life of furniture, specifically when it comes to repairability of furniture, was the third one. And I'm gonna walk you through those different situations in a very summarized slides. But the first one was basically how can digital product passports encourage manufacturers to design and produce furniture that allows circular principles? Because we know that digital product passports will be in first place applied for new products. So how can we apply more sustainable and circular design principles, and then how that information can be shared in a digital product passport? And what we understood from interviews with the different actors, both in the project and outside the project, was that it's not enough with just sharing information and having transparency of information between the different actors. It's also important to report on how environmental and sustainable furniture design are going to be. And then we don't have basically any suggestions currently on how to share circular information points in a digital product passport and how they should be expressed, if there should be standards also on how the information points which are specifically focused on circularity should be shared in a product passport, so that we would basically minimize human intervention along the way, and it would be in a way that is machine readable between different actors. To dig a little bit deeper on what this means, we focused on 3 example pieces of furniture to see if we can build prototypes for information points that needs to be shared, and do a gap analysis on what information is missing basically in the value chain. And there we understood that there's a lot of information that is needed to be able to work and measure repairability of furnitures. That was highlighted in this gap analysis, that it could be nice if a product passport can also help us get access to that type of information, which is currently lacking, and then allows us to actually design furniture which are more likely to be repairable in future. So that took us to the second situation, which was basically focused on extending the life of furniture and repairability of furniture, and what digital product passports can enable in that scenario. In Sweden, we know that, for example, Swedish households throw away around 170,000 tons of usable furniture each year in the dump. And a lot of times they actually end up in the dump because the users, consumers, or even if it's a company, industrial applications, they don't know what to do with them, and they don't know how to repair them. They don't know where to send them to be repaired. So it's out of convenience that they end up in the dump. But of course, we can do something about that. It's also, there are some other dimensions to it which we cannot always solve, I would say, only with one solution. Like now it's also, when we look at the price setting of new products versus reused products, there is not much incentive to go for refurbished or repaired products. There is also a lot of burden when it comes to logistics and those type of issues, but of course those have been a bit out of scope of this project. But one thing that we see is that repairability and support for repairability could be one aspect that can be highlighted in product passports. We could help professional repairers, like certified refurbishers, to use the information in product passports to get a better assessment of if something is repairable or not. And then there can be, for both professionals and also for consumers, like repair guides, access to supplies of spare parts, like where to find spare parts and which spare parts are okay to use for different furniture models. Especially because there is also a lot of burden for refurbishers to when manufacturers have to repair a furniture that is not their own brand's furniture. and how which something that we call like hybrid furniture, if you actually do a little bit of mix and match between spare parts when you do repair compared to what has been used in the original model. And all that information along the life cycle can also be saved in a product passport. It was really nice that earlier in the discussion, both the visualization of product passports and like the freedom that we could expect to be there, and what elements will be restricted, what elements can be more free for the manufacturers or other types of users to choose. That was brought up in the discussion, and also energy labels as like one example to get inspiration from when it comes to eco design and applications in the past. And that's what we did also in this project. Like if we actually use energy labels as an example and do a version of a product passport for furniture inspired by that, then we got a lot of comments when we tested that on user friendliness and how you can make such information available in a more user friendly way. So that was the sort more like refined version of sharing the same type of information. And then when it comes to assembly and repairability instructions, then of course you can also add a lot of different types of information to a product pass: images, illustrations, videos, step-by-step instructions. And there we could also see that the needs of professional actors that work with repairing of the furnitures, upholsterers, are very different than regular consumers and what they need. And then of course you can have different interfaces and different accessibility to information also for general public and for professional actors. We also used an example or inspiration from service books of a car, that while there is also a lot of information from the production and the upstream value chain of products, you could also have the possibility to add information along the way, such as what we do in service books, that we add what has happened, what material has been used, what service the car has taken, and on what date and everything. So for a consumer, for example, and professional actors, they could also have the possibility to add data to the product passport. And this is an illustration of that. Then on the spare parts, we also saw that that's a high prioritization, and that's also an obstacle, I would say, in the current value chains, that we don't have so much information about the spare parts and availability of spare parts. So of course, that could be also something to bring in to a product passport, even like where the spare parts that you need are available on what market, and do an automated order of those spare parts that you need, like using a product passport as a link to an e-commerce platform to order things. That could also be a possibility that we investigated. And then what information points are crucial to see in when it comes to spare parts, which you see also on this slide. I don't know how I'm doing with the time. I think we should jump further and tell you a little bit about the third scenario, which was about how we can use the digital product passport to support consumers and the customers in choosing more sustainable and circular products to buy, and then how to take care of them, basically along the value chain. And here we saw that we can support the consumers at the purchasing point with the information that they usually require beyond the price of the furniture, which is now the main determinant when we do shopping. And sometimes, yeah, the design and what you know about the manufacturer also plays a role, but there could be so many more aspects added there. So for example, you can add a section to a product passport which is about me, about the furniture. And there you can have everything from the measurements to the manufacturer to material that has been used, source of material, carbon footprint. So all the information that a consumer could have in mind to choose if they want to buy that furniture or not. You can also provide a possibility for the user afterwards to sell their piece of furniture further. They can share information, a picture about the status of the furniture, add also information about what they like, if they have repaired it, if they have taken care of it, how they have done it, and also even we can have an automatized possibility to link that information to an online market, so that the furniture can be reused in a second, third, or fourth application. And of course, there can be also for the consumers, they also need some information about the history of the furniture and what has happened along the way to the piece of furniture, which could help them decide like if they want to buy reused furniture or not. Here you have access to the prototypes that we have made in the project. Phil, of course, I think it would be really nice to get any feedback that you have. So if you have the time and interest, feel free to check the prototypes and give us your feedback. We also looked a little bit into how the future business ecosystems will be affected by possibilities or added circularity possibilities that we see with product passports. That it requires also a lot of more alignment of incentives and strategic alliances and partnerships between different actors along the value chain, larger actors, established companies, smaller designers, small, medium-sized firms, and how they can support each other in this type of transformation. Of course, a lot of requirements when it comes to standardization of things and how to make sure that the exchange of the data along the value chain will be seamless. Here, I think the previous presentations were perfect in showing us the way. And then also like local and international policies and standards, how they could affect the future business ecosystems. So there is, if there is any interest, I can share the report, and there is even more information about this scenarios for the future business ecosystem. And we are continuing basically the same track in the new projects to looking into like specifically how the digital product passports along the value chain can be organized and coordinated. We also have some applications that are waiting for the decisions. So I would be very happy to connect and to continue the dialogue about this topic with anyone that is interested. Thank you so much. I stop sharing now so that I can see you again.
Thank you, Sarah. It's always very interesting to see advanced solutions. There was one question at the very beginning of your presentation, which I think you answered just perfectly, about customer-to-customer remarketing of furniture. I think this was exactly, your presentation was exactly the answer to the question. So I think we can proceed with the next project. Thank you very much. The next project is Muddy Trace, and it will be presented by Doruk Sahinel from Sperity. Please.
Hi. So I hope you can see my screen. So hi everyone, my name is Doruk Sahinel, and today I will be talking about the MetaTrace DPP approach for traceability in raw material supply chains. So first, to give you the two definitions in our project's name. So critical raw materials, as you all know, like cobalt, lithium, natural graphite, and rare earth elements, they're vital for industries such as electronics, renewable energy, and automotive manufacturing. And when we say traceability, what we mean is the tracking the history and location of products and materials, and critical raw materials in our case, throughout the supply chain. So what we want to achieve in MetaTrace is to ensure traceability of these critical raw materials and enable compliance with European regulations. And we want to achieve this by providing an architectural framework for the supply chains, and by bringing together the data models, the traceability tools, digital product passports, and management systems. So within this framework, DPP is responsible for linking the information on tracking, transport, processing of critical raw materials in the supply chain, and also enabling decentralized information sharing methods between the verifiable and trusted organizations. So it should be able to store the information, all these information as verifiable credentials. And it should also serve as the interface for SERA 4-in-1 certification scheme for supply chains, which is provided by TÜV. So when we look at the background of this architectural framework, we need to bring together a lot of concepts, regulations, standards. What we do here, basically, we talked about the DPP and traceability, but another foundational concept is SSI, self-sovereign identities for identity management, which will bring the decentralized connectivity between the trusted partners. So governance and trust to enable the policies between the data exchange of these partners is very important as a concept. Conformity credentials, so the legal could be the legal identities, the safety credentials, product carbon footprints, all are very important as part of the architectural framework. And data spaces are an important example for data exchange with standards, semantics, and also with protocols. On the other hand, I'm going clockwise. For the regulations, we have the European Battery Regulation, which requires transparency in critical raw materials for the entire supply chain. We have the Corporate Sustainability and Due Diligence Directive, which complements this regulation, also with human right for due diligence and also for human rights and environmental impacts. We have already talked about ESPR, so this is also very important for the circular economy and also requires traceability, which is a must for our architecture framework. In the reference implementations, we have EUDI wallet to store, so they issue the DPP and store the verifiable credentials. UN Transparency Protocol is important because it provides us the models and vocabulary for the traceability events and also for DPP. And Catena X provides an architectural framework. It's also important for the automotive industry, but also provides us a data exchange framework and the standards for data exchange within a semantics. So standards initiatives, I think, has been talked a lot, but they also provide us the DPP standards in this architecture framework. And on top of it, we talked about centralized identifiers, verifiable credentials, and also we need to implement their protocols. And Eclipse Data Connector and Asset Administration Shell are part of Catena X already for data exchange. So this was a very detailed background, but when we want to simplify all this into some architecture principles, we have these 4 pillars. So first being the accessibility. So in MediTrace, we utilize open API documentation in order to have an architecture that's free from proprietary standards. We would like to use, again, for interoperability, open standards like W3C, verifiable credentials. We need to make sure that different systems can work together in a semantically interoperable manner, which also brings UN Transparency Protocol into play. We want to have a modular architectural framework. This is important so we can clearly identify independent building blocks and the defined interfaces between them. So when we want to exchange, update one of the blocks, the effect should be minimal to the other components in the architecture. And verifiability, of course, is a must in traceability, but in order to mention this again, we need to ensure that all data is accurate and could be traceable back to verifiable identity. So issued by a legitimate source and for regulatory compliance. Another loaded slide, but I wanted to keep all these high-level architecture components in a modular fashion together. So in order to enable this architecture framework, we will be concentrating on these components. I will again start clockwise from the very top with the data exchange protocol. So there, DITCOM and Eclipse data space connector protocols are important for us. They should enable the secure communication and data transfer in the stakeholders. Data should be verifiable, and this we achieve by using UNTP's conformity credentials and traceability events, but data should be able to confirm its authenticity, integrity, and origin. What we need in our architecture must is the organizational identity wallet, which is unique to all organizations. So it should store and manage, and it should be able to present credentials. So UDI wallet, as we mentioned, is an important component here. For the trust chain, we need to have a root credential where we can verify the identity of a stakeholder back to a trusted authority. So chambers of commerce could be an example here. And enterprise credentials, which are built on top from this, issued from this root credential. So it means that there's this digital credential that is identifies this organization as a legal entity. On top, there could be a membership credential like the Katana X if we want to achieve communication within a data space. So there should be also this stakeholders should be registered to this data space in that example. And semantics layer is in itself very important. So we need to make sure that the meaning and the structure of the shared information is same for every stakeholder. There, again, there works from Katina-X with the semantic hub, and JS1 EPSIS with UN Transparency Protocol will provide this semantics for us. SSI authorization and access control. So in a decentralized fashion, it should allow permissions to be managed through verifiable credentials. And finally, we have the digital twin, which should serve as the digital representation. So it should retrieve the information from the stakeholders' processes and should interact with the digital product passport. So the data that we show in the digital product passport is obtained from the internal database. So by having all these high-level architecture components, we want to achieve some use cases, and I will try to simplify these with these flowcharts. So what we want to achieve in the use case is create traceability event. So traceability events are already defined by the UN Transparency Protocol. What we want to do here is that we have a battery chemicals manufacturer who has a material transformation event, and it wants to record it into its DPP. So it first records this process data to its internal database, the traceability system or resource planning tool. And then it interacts with the organization, so the battery chemicals manufacturer's own identity wallet to initiate the credential issuance for this process. And within itself, it uses this W3C verifiable credential to issue the credential for this material transformation event. Another use case that we want to achieve within MetaTrace is this request mine audit use case. In this case, we have two stakeholders. One is the mine, and we have the auditor. Both have their own organizational identity wallets, and we are trying to show in the flowchart an audit process where the mine requests this mining permit from the auditor, and through its organizational identity wallet and through the data exchange protocol, it sends this permit issuance request to the auditor. Then the auditor retrieves this information and validates the mine process with an on-site audit in this example. And if it's successful, then a mining permit credential is created and sent to the organization. So in this case, to the mine, again, over the data exchange protocol. And the mine can display this credential whenever it is asked for. A third use case that we want to achieve within this architecture framework is a data sharing use case. Here we have refinery and battery chemicals manufacturer as an example. Again, they both have their organizational identity wallets. In the first case, first part, the refinery sends an order confirmation containing its public DPP link, and battery chemicals manufacturer checks this DPP link to verify the identity of the refinery. And then requests the material information, which is specific to the supply chain. And in this case, in order to retrieve this private material information, sends this request, the verifiable presentation requests to the organizational identity vault of the refinery, and then refinery evaluates this. Again, this transfer occurs over the data exchange protocol, and this verifiable presentation is sent to the battery chemicals manufacturer to check the to verify this material information. Fourth use case that we want to show is this data verification step. Again, we're using the refinery here, so it gets a verifiable presentation from a stakeholder within the supply chain, and now it wants to verify, could be the signature, the trusted issuer, the timestamp, semantics, or the trust chain of this presentation. And in this case, it connects to the verifiable data registry within the self-sovereign identity model to prove all these steps that we mentioned in order to check in order to verify this presentation. Well, so we want to enable these 4 use cases, and in order to achieve this, this architecture framework has to support the storage and presentation of the various credentials that we mentioned in the use cases, including the legal identity credentials. They should be interoperable with existing ecosystems and using SSI principles for direct connectivity among all supply chain stakeholders. The examples we show are all cases for direct connectivity. And of course, it should be able to handle traceability events, which is a must for our architecture and mentioned in the UN Transparency Protocol. What we want to do in our project is, it's an ongoing project as future work. So this is our proof of concept architecture. We want to create a prototype of it to demonstrate its applicability in the use cases that we mentioned. But these are generic use cases. We know that different material and supply chain characteristics should also be validated. So this usability of the architecture also will be checked for different material and supply chain characteristics. We want to integrate SARA 4-in-1 certificate. So we need to complete this step as a verifiable credential in our system. And also fingerprinting data in traceability events is also very important as a future work in our project. So try to keep it short. I hope it was okay for you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it was fine, and interesting to hear also about more focus on traceability this time. So since the event is also about the traceability, and not only about the DPP, so this was very nice. And there is a question about what kind of trust anchors are you planning to support? It's a question from Coptil Florin.
Good question. To be honest, we haven't decided on the steps of the architecture yet. So what we provide is a generic use case, but of course we will be providing this information once we have not the proof of concept architecture, but the whole architecture integrated.
And there is one more question about UNTP mining pilots with the Ministry from British Columbia, whether you're aware.
Yes, we are.
Okay, perfect. So thank you very much, and we can proceed with the next project, which is Pluto, and Pluto will be presented by Kostas Kalaboukas from Maggioli. Please, Costa, the floor is yours.
Hello, good afternoon, good morning, or good afternoon. Just some seconds to set up the presentation. I hope you can see my screen. My name is Kostas Kalaboukas. I'm very glad to be here and listen to all these interesting talks and presentations, really very interesting. I don't want to spend more time. I'm coming from Maggioli, ICT company in Italy, which specialized in smart cities and other private solutions for private organizations. We had a lot of things today. I just want to show you how we have tackled the DPP and traceability, supply chain traceability in Pluto project. What we have seen, and one of the things we have seen, we have studied at the beginning, trying to understand, okay, what a DPP can be like, was this a pilot case, a pilot project from the Global Battery Alliance, which they had two manufacturing companies, Tesla and Audi, and they gave us very good insights of how a DPP can look like. So in general, we thought we came up to the concept that the DPP structure can contain different information, not just not only this, but it can be extended. For instance, we can have the passport profile, product characteristics, sustainability metrics of the product, some compliance declaration, whether it has to do with some product-specific norms and legislation. Potential circularity policies, for instance, if I have my, my desk, what should I do? Just some hints about circularity policies. Other descriptive info, data coverage, how the data was retrieved, and in order to get this DPP, and other potential disclaimers. So this was kind of DPP that we tried to contextualize what is this, and we came up to the concept of, okay, let's make some functionalities that you can configure your own DPP, your own digital product passport. I will come to this point later. First, I want to show, it was really interesting to hear that in the battery, the lessons from the battery sector was that sometimes you know only tire supply chain tire number one, and this is, and I assume this is also in other case supply chain context. So for us, how we are going to how we have modeled the Pluto, the supply chain for us is a kind of a supply chain with actors, and you are sharing information, product information through digital twin concept. So you have company A shares information about this material, which comes as incoming material to B, and so on and so forth. And B creates an output, B1 to C, and so on. And in this supply chain context, you model first who are the key stakeholders, and second, what kind of information you are modeled, what kind of material you are modeled as digital twins, which at the end you are sharing some information about this through your collaborators. And this is how we have this concept through the IDS connector, which have to be implemented at each organization in order to get the data, to aggregate, to harmonize, and share over some messaging service. We saw the case that for the case of a digital product passport, we also assume the concept of aggregation. So here is you get some digital product passport NA, you process, you get some information from the passport, and you give it to the next tire, and the next tire gets this aggregate information and goes from tire to tire in the whole supply chain. However, we could assume that in the case that there is a kind of transparency on the whole supply chain, then all the actors could also have access to the digital product passport, who A gives to B, so C is aware of this in order to incorporate the product passport information. So this kind of model approach ensures that all actors in a supply chain are somehow connected, linked. They are sharing some materials or products through digital twins approach, and they are sharing information real time or up-to-date information when something changes. Of course, this is not easy to be done just in an automatic way. So it is very critical, and you have already heard at the beginning, that this requires some business agreements, some level of okay, what to include in the DPP from the end, from C, or going backwards. That means there has to be a lot of discussions and agreements in each of this, in the whole supply chain. And how back to the supply chain can we go? Are we able to see this organization, track also this organization, or as it was said in the beginning, okay, I have no full transparency, so I give the whole liability to my supplier in order to get this information. So this has to do with the context and what is the supply chain, the trust level and the transparency in the supply chain. The second is how we collect the data and harmonize. This has to do with every organization. It's not, we all know that it's not just a very easy task to get the necessary data to align it, harmonize it, and put it in a digital product passport service to share with the other actors. And finally, to have this accessibility data governance, who has access to data and to which kind of information that I'm sharing different collaborators in my supply chain. What we are doing in Pluto, we have three supply chain cases. Each one represents different products or different contexts. We have a case in waste. All of them are circular cases. We have the case of waste magnets, where Celsa Group, there is one company, Ferromet, they get magnets from used products like car, washing machines, mobile. They classify those magnets. They give this information to this company, IMDA, which transforms these magnets into magnetic pellets to be used as secondary resource material in IMA product. In IMA is a magnet production factory. So we get the waste and produce new products. The second is how we transform waste prepreg into carbon fiber reinforced polymer for drones production. So the waste prepreg is produced by HP Composites, which gives this waste to SETMA, and they do some first requalification of the prepreg, and they give it to SETMA Composites to transform the prepreg, the waste prepreg, into core composites that will be used for drone production, drone manufacture as parts of the whole drone, of the drone construction. And finally is a case in the juice industry, where we have a juice manufacturer, a Spice in Greece, and they take the waste of the juice. When you squeeze the juice and the pills are taken, and they are not thrown away. They are created byproducts which can be used in cosmetics and other cases. They are creating molassa and other byproducts. So we have this case. We have this modeling approach for supply chain and traceability, and we said, what at the end of the day, what Pluto offers for DPP approach adoption and operation. So we offer some basic functionalities about how you can create your supply chain instance. So you have here, you are this collaborator, you are this company, and you get some materials as digital twins from this supplier, this supplier, this supplier. You can model all your supply chain through this context, and also this is done through mutual agreements for the whole life cycle of supply chain information sharing. We have data synchronization, so data comes from its digital twin is agreed what kind of information I will get from this organization. So there is a mutual agreement through data spaces, the data governance services. And this is synchronized when some information comes from about this product. For instance, I have this chair, I have this product with a lot number X. So I get it, and if we have agreed already that there is this synchronization, this information is coming directly to my IT system, and then. Once we have this traceability about the information to be shared, then I can create my own digital product passports. We have a functionality where you can configure your digital product passport based on this taxonomy or this data model for the DPPs, and you can get DPP from this company, or you can get the DPP from this company, so you can share it in your supply chain. And of course, you can have also the public view of a digital product passport through a website, and so everybody with QR code or with just putting the lot number ID with some basic search to see the results of the public view of the passport. So what we have learned from this project, there are 4 main steps in order to model and operate the digital product passport through this supply chain traceability. First, you have to model, you have to define what is the supply chain, to identify the key actors, the key stakeholders, and what is shared in terms of materials flow. And you have also to understand what are the sustainability DPP goals, what kind of information you need to share. Then, based on this, as a supply chain, you need to go at each phase of the supply chain, say, okay, I need this information from my tier 1 supplier and tier 2 supplier, and so on and so forth. If it is all together the system, okay. If it is inaggregated and there is no such transparency, this has to go backwards in the supply chain. Then you have to create, once you have agreed, you are part of this supply chain, you have agreed on some DPP information goals, you need to get the data from your internal system. So this is this is what digital twins can offer as possibility. You can aggregate and you have all the information about the product through the digital twin concept and approach. And of course, you can create the necessary sharing principles through data spaces and data IDs connectors. Sorry. And finally, to monitor and improve means that I'm sharing the DPP in my supply chain. I'm sharing the necessary information so that the next tier in my supply chain can aggregate this, use it internally, and produce its own passport. And so I have also monitoring capabilities, KPIs, how we are aligned with the DPP goals and sustainability. And finally, this means that maybe I can redefine the supply chain. I can extend the DPP goals, this information needs. So it's not just only about complying to the minimum required by the legislation, but this might go further to extend the scope in order to have more sustainability and to more transparency in the supply chain. So these are some basic information general information about the project. We are around 20 partners from different countries. We have 3 very interesting value networks, and this is to the next year we will finish the project. Now we are in very good shape of the development. We have already first prototypes that the value networks are operating together with some DPP structures. They are sharing some DPPs, and we are still in the finalization of the development activities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Costa. It was nice to see what DigiTrace sister project is doing. And also it was interesting the aspect about the juice process, the citrus processing, the juice sector, because it is a perfect link to the other 2 projects that we'll present now. So from the food sector, first one of them being Theros and then DPP for food. So I think I didn't see any question to your presentation. So I think we can proceed now with Theros. Nikos Zaharatos, from my colleague from our team, will speak now about Theros project.
Hello, can you hear me? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm Nikos Zaharatos. I'm part of Circular Economy and Tracing team of ICCS, and today I'll be talking to you about the DPP and traceability concept for organic foods in the Theros project. Theros is an integrated toolbox for improved verification and prevention of adulterations and non-compliances in organic and geographical indication full supply chains. It's an innovation action, and it's funded by the and is coordinated by the ICCS. The consortium consists of 4 research institutes and technology organizations, 4 control and certification bodies and authorities, 4 large enterprises and small and medium enterprises, 1 regulatory council for DPO, 2 retailers, wholesalers, and 1 cooperative and producer association. All of these are in 5 different European countries. Theros' vision is to implement an integrated toolbox, being capable to modernize the process of verifying organic and geographical indication food products and preventing adulteration and non-compliances while demonstrating enhanced traceability, security, and transparency in the supply chain. Through the use of various technologies and innovations, most of them leverage earth preservation, photonics, Internet of Things, DNA metabarcoding, blockchain, digital interfaces in product passport, advanced analytics, machine learning, and artificial intelligence in business models. At the same time, efficient mechanisms will be employed in order to ensure interoperability with existing control systems, as well as improved accessibility and sharing of data through harmonized and standardized means, while also demonstrating their uptake by relevant stakeholders for improved decision-making. In the left side of the screen, there is an image that shows a high-level architecture schema of Theros. Our main focus for this presentation will be the dynamic digital product passport and the blockchain traceability system, which you can see in the upper right and right part of the architecture. Okay, so why choose DPP for organic and geographical indication food assets? So food products are vulnerable to fraud and adulterations. They're also vulnerable to storage and transportation conditions. We also chose DPP to increase the transparency and traceability and to facilitate decision making. And last, to increase confidence about food safety and environmental health and environmental impact. In this slide, we can see the different products Theros focused on, which are crops, fruits, juices, flour, and mussels. The different users involved in the value chains, which are producers, supply chain actors, certification bodies, and consumers. The last column shows some information a user can see in the DPP of a product, which include the product information, track and trace, verification data, and compliance data. And the last column showcases some example of parameters that we present in the DPP, which are obtained through the Theros toolbox. Some of them are purity index of the product, origin of the products, and some markers from the Earth observation component. The traceability platform in Theros implements GS1 ICCS standard. This means that ICCS events are created in some critical tracking points inside the value chain, answering the what, where, when, and why questions. For example, a production event would look like this. The what question would be answered with oranges were harvested, the where question with a location, the when question with a date and time, and the why question would be answered with a reason. In this case, oranges were ripe and ready for processing. All of the above are present in all of the ICCS events. And on the right side, you can see the critical tracking events of the Greek pilot. The initial product is oranges, and the final product is orange juice. The traceability platform is built on top of a private blockchain network. Storing these ICCS events in the blockchain offers many advantages, including enhanced data integrity, which means that once the events get stored inside the blockchain, they cannot be altered. It also offers improved transparency. All stakeholders can access the same verified data, building trust in the process. And it also strengthens security. because data is encrypted and centralized, and that reduces the reliance on a single point of failure and enhances the resilience against unauthorized access. So now regarding the DPP, the DPP is divided into two services, backend and frontend. In the backend, the DPP service collects data from the traceability platform, which consists of ICCS events along the supply chain in order to provide a comprehensive digital profile of a product. This data is organized into the following 5 categories: product information, certifications, verifications, track and trace, and circularity and sustainability. The last one is currently under development. In the front end, the DPP app enables consumers, businesses, and regulators to easily verify product history, certifications, and authenticity. It promotes sustainability, transparency, and trust in the supply chain. And in the right side of the slide, there's a screen from the mobile app. This is the DPP screen of an orange juice product. We can see the different tabs for product info, verification, certifications. And in the upper right corner, we can press the track and trace icon to get more information about the steps the product in the value chain, the steps of the product. Here are some of the challenges we encountered. First one is about the evolution of the legislation and that the food products are not in its scope yet. And since the food products are not in the scope of the legislation, selecting data to populate the DPP is a demanding process. Also, the involved stakeholders are unfamiliar with the technical tools and methods required. So they need support to effectively engage in the value chain processes. Also, different value chains have different critical tracking events, so a degree of manual configuration is needed. Another challenge is that ICCS events have complex and heterogeneous structures, which means that extracting the valuable data needed for the DPP needs some pre-processing time. And also data reliability is another challenge. In Theros, it's partially addressed using tools like the verification engine and the integrity framework. But we have to make some more progress there. That's it.
Thank you, Nico. There are some questions which I think we can answer together because the main question is about the food not being included in the ESPR. Yes, you're completely right. This is the case, but we decided to include the projects related to food in the event because I think that the work performed in this project showed the potential and benefits in using DPPs also in this sector, and I think it's interesting to see how food sector is using the DPP and traceability. Sir, and our last project is also the food related project, DPP for Food by Alexandra Anderluch. And the title of the presentation is Digital Product Pass Concept for a Soy Supply Chain, First Insights. Because from what I know, the project has started this year. Is this correct, Alexandra?
Yeah, this is correct. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can hear you.
Yeah, and yeah, so I hope you can see now my slides in the presentation mode.
Yeah.
Yeah, fine. Yeah, so I do not have to add that many things because a lot of what I have in my presentation has already been mentioned. This is, in contrast to the other projects, a rather small national project funded from the Lower Austrian Funding Agency. So we have also just a few partners. The main partners is our University of Applied Sciences and our company partner Sojarai, a producer of tofu. And we have 3 cooperation partners, another research partner dealing with the consumer and packaging aspects, and 2 additional companies. One is a pharma and one is a wholesaler in for organic food. And what we want to do, or what we are currently doing in this project, is we want to check how the digital product passport concept is fit for in improving the traceability along food supply chains with a specific focus on the soy supply chain. This is more or less our project objective. As already mentioned, we started in March this year. So we are more in the beginning phase of our project. We are currently in the first 2 work packages, more or less, to figure out what are the specific requirements and how could the concept look like. And to go a bit more into detail, what are we currently doing? We are currently in the phase of collecting existing perceptions, finding out the openness and opinions towards DPP implementation in the food industry or along food supply chains. And for that, we are currently doing semi-structured face-to-face expert interviews. We have already done 6 interviews, and my colleague is currently doing another one, and 2 more are planned for next week. So we are currently in this phase, and you see we have already done interviews from the pharma up to the retailer with certain experts, and we also asked institutes and people from authorities to also find out their perspective. And I have summarized here some findings from the interviews, because what we also want to know is what do stakeholders along the supply chain think about such concepts. And we have seen that especially small companies and entities are a bit skeptic because they assume that it will cause additional costs, and they fear that there will be no kind of financial support or compensation for this. We have also seen that especially in Austria, or we can just say it for Austria because all our interview partners are from Austria, that there is a bit of skepticism to share potentially competitive information. On the other hand side, especially small producers often do not have detailed information at the moment because they do not collect these data. And they also fear, as I've already mentioned, higher costs and financial burden. On the other hand side, the interview partners sometimes also told us that there are already very standardized and regulated parts regarding food quality. And they also mentioned that additional bureaucracy might generate resistance against these actions. When we then go more to the authorities and auditors side, of course, they would welcome greater transparency because that might facilitate their control processes. And what was mentioned several times is that the DPP itself is at the moment not designed for such perishable low-cost products as soybean products like tofu. And that additional burdens and additional transparency can also weaken small and medium businesses. These are the first insights from the interviews. And on the other hand side, we also dealt with what would be interesting data and what is mandatory data, because there are already existing national and international regulations and standards. On the other hand side, there might also be additional data that could be of interest. That was also a thing we asked our interview partners, and we focused on, as I've already mentioned, different stakeholders along the supply chain. So from the farmers to the producers to the retailers, but also authorities and audit organizations. And we want to focus also on the end consumers, but this is something we have to do in the future. And then another thing we also discussed in our interviews is how the players along the supply chain see access right distribution along such a DPP-based concept. Regarding the data, this is just the start of the list regarding mandatory data. And we have some national regulation like the law regarding waste, where we have already regulations about food waste reporting, food donation reporting. We have regulations or ideas on an international level that deal more with health impact and nutritional values. And then, of course, as already have been mentioned, we have food quality and safety regulations that deal with information about ingredients, allergens, origin, best before date, certifications, and so on. We are currently collecting this information and add then also optional data that might be of interest, and we connect them also to the specific life cycle in the supply chain. And our first concept is also based on distributed ledger technologies. We also looked into other innovative methods and technologies, but currently we are focusing on DLT. And we are currently in the phase of setting up the scheme, the necessary encryption schemes that we need to restrict access or also give our access rights for different stakeholders. Yeah, that's the current state of our project where we are. And of course, we have a lot of additional steps to do. So we have to finish our interviews, figure out all the relevant data, based on the first concept, develop a lab prototype for our concept in continuous discussion with our company partner, but also with our interview partners. And then we want to test the prototype with all the players along the soy supply chain to find out what the benefits, but maybe also challenges could be. And last but not least, as I've already briefly mentioned, we want to include also the customer's view, the end consumer's view. So which information would they be interested in, for example, to gain from such a concept? Yeah, I hope I could have contributed to save some time. If you want further information, there is also a little project website, and if you want additional information, just contact me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alexandra. From our side, from Theros side, I can add that we are also consulting stakeholders to a big extent, and we are currently in the testing phase of our DPPs with the pilots. So I think for the food sector, it's interesting that we could stay in touch to see the common challenges and to see how it's going for both projects. So thank you very much. I just saw that one comment from Caroline. The need for a low-cost DPP solution is clear, as your use case shows. Are you aware of the Australian beef pilot by the UNT group? So maybe it's worth having a look.
Yeah. Definitely. So we will focus on all this information, and I've also found very interesting presentations in this setting. So thank you very much for inviting me to present our project here.
Thank you, Alexandra. So this was the last presentation. I have prepared a short one slide with conclusions from today's event. Okay, just give me a second. So just please, you can see my screen now, right?
Yes. Yes, Lucy. Yes.
Perfect. So just to keep in mind that this slide was prepared during the event while listening to the speeches and handling the chat. So please excuse me if I missed something important. We will try to prepare a recap of the event, so that the information will be more detailed and more precise. But just a short summary. So we had over 260 registrations for this event. And today, at the peak, we have seen more than 150 participants. So I think this clearly shows that there is a great interest in the topic and also great need for clustering in the DPP domain. So now summarizing what we have learned today, we had the opportunity to get to know closer some of the existing initiatives, and we have seen how different teams approach the topic of DPP and traceability. Concerning the need for a common approach, which was highlighted in several talks today, some aspects which I managed to catch and note down, which probably should be taken into account. And when discussed today, it's standardization, interoperability, different aspects of interoperability, including semantic interoperability, verification of data authenticity, the possibility of reuse of the data so that the companies can use it also for other purposes. Also raising awareness and informing businesses about the DPPs and the whole process. User-friendliness and flexibility. So those were some aspects which were mentioned, and probably there are more. We'll try to gather them in a summary. Also, more opportunities were highlighted, such as combination of different technologies with DPPs, for example, sorting systems and sensors integration. Also, there's a growing interest in DPP for food sector, although it is not included under ESPR. I just wanted to say that I'm confident that today's event is just the start of the discussion with several opportunities for networking approaching, including our second digital product passport event in 1 year from now with physical presence. So thank you all once again for attending, and hope to see you again soon to discuss and DPPs and work towards a common approach for this concept. That's all from our side.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Very much.
Thank you.
Hope to see you again.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.